Welcome to Odd Talk, a podcast from Open Door Baptist Church recorded in Prattville, Alabama. Hosted by Danny, the associate pastor at Open Door, Odd Talk is a program which discusses the Bible from its creator to creation and everything in between. Many episodes are interviews with people who attend Open Door Baptist Church on various topics, but all episodes will edify and equip you to live your faith actively within your community. Let's tune in to see what the discussion is about today.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to Odd Talk, and I got a military guest with me today. Mike, you're a military member, right?
That's correct.
It took me a little while to figure out how to actually pronounce your name. You know, is that common for you?
It is. Telemarketers have a real hard time.
What do they say?
Ruyle. Ruyle. So if they don't pronounce my name right, I know they don't know me. So kind of clears that up.
Well, I knew you for a few weeks, and I was like, how do you spell this? Is this like Ruyle or
yeah. Just pretend the Y's not there. That's it.
There you go. So we got Mike Ruyle with us. Mike, military member. So how long you been in the service?
19 years now. Over 19 years, yeah.
And he's in the forgotten service. And so normally when, before the Space Force came a thing and the Guardians of the Galaxy joined, Coast Guard tended to be the missing DOD branch. Why do you think that is?
We kind of fly under the radar. What we do is not combat related. We're not a lot of movies made about us. Kids don't grow up wanting to be coasties. They want to be soldiers and, fighter pilots. Nobody says they want to grow up to be a Coast Guard member. So we're just culture, I guess.
That's true. But you guys do a lot with pirates, right?
Yeah, pirates, a lot of law enforcement, search and rescue are two biggest things that we're involved in.
Have you ever been in the Caribbean?
I have.
So you've battled pirates of the Caribbean?
Somewhat, yeah.
That's pretty cool, though. But so Coast Guard, it seems to be, I get the idea of it's a lot about boats. Is that true, or? For
the most part, most of our missions are done from boats. However, we've got a lot of aviation units, and that's what I do. I'm in aviation.
Aviation, helicopters, airplanes, what?
We have both. I was specifically on helicopters. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, I don't want to divulge too much information because I've asked Mike here to talk a little bit about his military career and specifically how faith plays a role in military career and specifically more of an operational side. Now, I did some years in the Air Force, and I was very much we used to be called paper pushers, but by the time I retired, we were electron processors because everything went digital. And so I was not an operational career field unless, the operating system that I used, Windows, that was operational. But you were more of only time I actually saw a gun is when I went to Security Forces Armory and I saw them in the cage.
Yeah.
I never saw a gun. So you have a unique story and a unique background, and we're going to tap into that as far as faith is involved. But first, before we get into any of that, could you share a little bit about yourself, who you are? We already divulged you got, even though it's like 6 letters, it's a hard to pronounce name, Coast Guard. But could you share a little bit about that, maybe military service, whatever you want to share, family, any ministries, jobs, whatever?
Yeah, sure. So, my name's Mike Ruyle. Been attending Open Door for about a year and a half now. And like was previously mentioned, been in the Coast Guard for almost 19 and a half years now. And I've been married to my wife, Scarlett, for coming up on 13 years. Wow. And we've got 3 boys, the ages of 8, 6, and 3. So coming home from work, I never know what I'm going to come into. If it's a Nerf gun fight, water gun fight, what's broken. So it's a lively house, lots of energy. But it's a really fun phase of life. I love being a dad, for sure.
How does your wife do with all men in the house?
And a male dog, too. I can't forget about that.
And a male dog.
Yeah, so she's the only. So I think she likes it because she's the queen. There's no competition.
No competition. Alyssa, if you're hearing that, So Alyssa is my daughter, and, I'm been married for quite a while, and have a daughter and a son. But so you said there's no competition in your house, but I have a daughter and a wife, and so Rebecca and Alyssa, there's competition going on. So, but
yeah, and interesting story on how we found Open Door.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of take it back a few years. So 3 churches before Open Door, we'd have been attending some churches that found out they were Calvinist leaning and Lordship leaning. And so that kind of got me on this quest to really do more research on just some alternative interpretations of Scripture from what they were teaching.
Right.
And so I started reading some books, listening to podcasts. My dad gave me some books from Charlie Bing, which was kind of like one of my favorite authors for a long time.
Yeah,
and
he's really good.
Like listening to his podcast. And we were down in Florida, and I came across this podcast where Charlie Bing was being interviewed. And so I started listening to this guy. And, it turns out he's sitting right here with me. It was C4C Apologetics. And I didn't know where I was going to get.
I bet you got some good sleep listening to that guy.
Oh, man, that radio voice and everything. Yeah.
I've been told I got a voice for podcasts.
I got a face for
Sleep
radio. But yeah, so I started listening to podcasts, lots of good guests on there, learned a lot. And then we came up to transfer, and we were going to Montgomery, Alabama, which was kind of out of the blue. I'm like, what are we doing here? Anyways, trying to find a church up here, and tried several out, and nothing felt like the right place, and just didn't feel settled in any of these churches. And I don't remember if you mentioned it or if I looked you up and found out you're a pastor in Prattville, Alabama, and I'm like, no way, that's 30 minutes from where I live. I've been listening to this guy for months, and it turns out he's a pastor where I got stationed. So we came to Open Door first week, and just a significant difference. We felt welcomed. There was you could sense like a unity and love in the congregation. People were laughing. You could tell they knew each other. And then obviously the teaching, really appreciate that. But the thing that sealed the deal for us was after church, we asked the kids, what'd you learn in Sunday school? And they were able to tell us what they learned. And they all had a great time in Sunday school. Excellent. So we're like, okay, I think we found where the Lord led us. And just neat to see how the Lord used your ministry and C4C and the podcast to bring us here. And we're so thankful.
Well, I appreciate that, man. Yeah, C4C is, I've since walked away from that. I felt the Lord leading me elsewhere. And so one of the main things is really what we're doing right now, for the church. But we're so glad that you and your family have been here. And your boys are high energy, aren't they?
Yeah. Take after their mom.
Oh, is that what it is?
I think I'm going to be in trouble after this interview here.
Well, we can edit whatever you want to edit.
Nah, let's roll.
Well, we're so glad that you've been here and been here for a while, too, because it's been how long now?
It's about a year and a half. I think 2 years in November, I want to say. Yeah.
Okay. So, all right. So you came to church. You were looking for churches. You got stationed out here. You mentioned your dad gave you some books on Dr. Charlie Bing and his Grace Life Ministries and great resources. One of his wonderful books is Grace, Salvation, Discipleship book. And it goes through certain passages that Lordship Calvinists really hijack. But let's backtrack even further back from that. How did you end up getting saved? What's your salvation testimony?
So I'm a pastor's kid.
Oh,
so
PK.
Yep.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. My whole life. So, yeah, I grew up going to church and was around, good biblical teaching at church and at home, and accepted Christ at a young age, 7 years old, and, continued on going to church. But then later in high school, I started getting that slow drift, kind of decided I wanted to live my own life and doing my own thing, did not prioritize my walk with the Lord. And then I joined the Coast Guard, and things did not get better from there.
You mean the military is not conducive?
At times, no, it's not. Surprise.
Newsflash.
I know, it's a shocker. But, so I spent a good time of probably close to a decade just getting into things that were not honoring to God, a life of drinking and partying, that typical stuff that you think about that goes along with that. And I ended up getting stationed in Wisconsin, of all places, the Coast Guard in Wisconsin.
So you a Packer fan?
No.
Good.
No.
Good.
My in-laws are.
Ugh.
And I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan.
Oh,
so
no.
It's probably not any better.
Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up this interview with Mike.
Hey, don't worry. We're not a threat. We're terrible.
I'm sorry. You were stationed out at Wisconsin.
Yeah. Up in Wisconsin. And, I was living that lifestyle, and I show up to this unit, small unit, 25, 30 people. Okay, very small unit. There's 6 guys at this unit that when I showed up there, I instantly knew that they were Christians. I could sniff it out, because I'd had all that experience. But more so just the way that they were interacting with each other, treating people, the way they spoke. They had that just peace about them, joy. And, I saw that, and the life that I was living was not giving me those things. And I wanted what they had. So they reached out to me, and they invited me to church. and I decided to go one Sunday, and it was Faith Church in Manitowoc, Wisconsin, pastored by Jeremy Vance.
Yep, he was the FGA president for a little while there.
Right. So it's kind of interesting, the Free Grace had a big part in me returning to a walk with the Lord.
There you go.
And I'm finally made my way back to Free Grace Church. But yeah, so I heard some very, very clear biblical teaching there. It's just things just really started to make sense and click from that teaching. And, just got so convicted. The Lord was just working on my heart that whole time. And, got really convicted of the life I'd been living. And, I was able to, one night I was just crying out to God, saying, God, I know what I'm doing is not in your will. And I asked him, I tried to stop drinking for many years, doing a variety of things. Nothing worked. And I said, God, I need you to do this. And it was a miracle that I witnessed. He took it from me.
Amen.
And it's been 13 years since I've drank. And I'm just so thankful for God and his patience, his mercy and grace in my life.
That's awesome, man. 13 years dry, huh?
Yep.
That's wonderful. Man, all right, so you got saved at a young age. We need to say 7? 7 years old. And you didn't have everything figured out at 7, right?
I thought I did.
You thought you did, huh?
I still think I do, which that's, no, now I know I don't have it figured out.
And that's the beauty of the grace message of salvation, is the fact that just like Jesus taught, salvation should be simple enough that a child could receive it. And it doesn't necessitate a automatic turning from sins and to living a godly life. And so I love that, grace message of salvation. So childhood evangelism, very important, very vital. I know a lot of people like that. So, all right. So we want to talk a little bit about your military service and how faith played a role. Now, you talked a bit about, going prodigal, if you will, and then coming back through different avenues that God had put in your path. So, but before we do, let's get sort of like a groundwork, a base understanding of what did you do in the military as a Coast Guard? Now, I know this podcast is more about an operational career field, but walk us through your career. What all have you done?
Okay. So my first unit was up in Kodiak, Alaska. I was up there kind of just waiting for my school to open up. So I got involved with law enforcement, doing fisheries law enforcement. We go out there and do inspections on fishing vessels out there, commercial fishing vessels.
So like in the Hobbit movie, did you ever find anybody hiding in the barrels of the fish trying to break through?
I did not.
No? Okay. I just had to ask if you were in the fisheries.
Yeah. And now I remember that part of the movie. That's funny. Yeah. And after that, I went to a school, and I was a gunner's mate. So I did a lot of range training, taught crews I qualified them at the range to use machine guns and different firearms. Yeah. And then I transitioned from that into aviation, which is what I'm currently doing now, technically. I'm an avionics technician. So my primary duty was to fix and repair aircraft and helicopters.
Maintainer type. Okay.
We'd also fly, so I was a flight mechanic, and I'd be the person in the helicopter running the hoist during search and rescue missions. So working with the pilots and the rescue swimmer, and did that for a number of years. And then I applied to go be a Precision Marksman, which is...
That sounds so cool.
Sniper sounds cooler, but we don't use the term sniper. So I applied for that program, and it's based out of Florida. It got picked up. It's about a year-long program of training you have to go through before they turn you loose. For good reason. And our main tasking is to go out in the Caribbean. Like we mentioned earlier, I have been out in the Caribbean.
Pirates.
Exactly. Yeah. Hey, do you know how much the pirate paid for his earrings?
A buccaneer.
A buccaneer. There we go. We got that one out of the way. Dad joke day. All right. So Caribbean and Eastern Pacific. Now, what we're asked to do is go out there and find the drug smugglers. The cartels will build boats, submarines, different vessels in the jungle, and they'll load them full of cocaine, and they'll try and race them across the ocean. And they'll run them up into different islands and try to get to Central America with the drugs, and then from there they'll take it into America. So what we're asked to do is go find them at sea before they make landfall. So it's a pretty neat operation to see all the logistics that goes into that. It's a really neat operation to be involved in. So my specific duty would be, we find a boat that's running from us, and oftentimes these things are hopped up on horsepower, and they're getting real evasive and bobbing and weaving. They don't want to stop because they know they're going to jail, and so then I'll shoot their engines out from the helicopter, and then disable the boat, and then our ship will send small boats out there to detain suspects and, take all the contraband and dispose of it.
Wow. Okay, so you really neutralized the vessels and shot the engine. So that precision marksman type deal, huh?
That's right, yeah.
Okay. So is that in essence like sniper?
We don't use the term, but we don't do quite as extensive training as other military branches snipers do. They do a lot of extra stuff than we would need, concealment,
Like
more
UV suits and
recon.
stuff?
Yeah, we don't need to do necessarily all that, but we train to do shootout long range on a couple of different weapon systems. And then where we kind of separate is, we're shooting from moving helicopter to moving boat. So we do a lot of training, shooting moving targets, which, it sounds very difficult, which I feel like if you got a basic set of skills with firearms, and if you've got good pilots, you can get it done. Yeah,
Really?
The pilots make all the difference. So I give them all the credit. And we've got some awesome pilots in the Coast Guard that they can push that aircraft to do things that it shouldn't do.
I bet that's kind of nerve-wracking, though.
It can be, yeah.
Are you a thrill seeker?
I am, but you know what? If I never get back in another helicopter, I'm just fine with that. I've had my share of close calls.
Oh, I imagine, yes. So, all right, so precision marksman, that makes sense, especially when you got two vehicles traveling at different speeds and trying to figure out, okay, where do you aim to go ahead and disable an engine? So, with Open Door being a Second Amendment friendly church,
right?
I imagine you're probably like maybe the best shooter at the church. Would you say that, all of our odd folks listening?
I would not say that.
Okay.
Because I've been humbled. I'll say that. I used to do some shooting competitions and thought I was pretty hot stuff, and I continue to get humbled going to the range and shooting against some old timer.
So what do you do now?
For competitions?
No, as a job in the Coast Guard.
I'm a Coast Guard recruiter, so it's way cooler than being a precision marksman. All the papers that I get to file, and I get to tell a lot of stories and wow people with my really cool experiences. So
yeah, you were just telling me a story before we started, weren't you?
Yeah. That was pretty exciting. I've come to find that I might be a better operational coastie than a admin coastie with paperwork. It's not really my thing.
So my admin job is safe for now.
Right,
So.
yeah. I'm not coming for it, don't worry.
And so I appreciate you and thank you for your military service to our nation, especially in one of the, Department of Defense branches that doesn't get a lot of attention. So I appreciate you guys and your role as far as trying to get the drugs away from our country, and the kids. And we have friends of ours who's he's teenage, about 16, 17-year-old kid ended up overdosing on fentanyl and ended up dying. Man. And so, drugs is a really, really challenge here in the country.
Yeah.
So I appreciate your career for it. But so as far as being in the military for 19 years, and I know you're going to retire and you're going to stay here, and so that's great to hear. But living your faith. So you got back into, when you were in Wisconsin, you sort of came back to the faith, no longer prodigal, tried living your faith for Christ and for others to minister and serve. Were there any type of challenges as far as being in the military, that trying to live your faith openly, that any challenges like that?
So I've worked a handful of civilian jobs as well.
Okay.
I did some like power line construction and a variety of other jobs, and I'd see the same difficulties in civilian jobs as I do in the military workforce too. And I've been so blessed in my career that, aside from a few locations, I've always had believers around me that I can lean on and get encouragement from. Like the 6 guys in Wisconsin. Here in Montgomery, I had an office full of believers too. So I've been really blessed. There are times, and you run into this at any job, where, policy says don't say something, about certain topics. So living your faith out loud is not exactly encouraged by employers. But overall, I would say, comparing it to my civilian jobs, I haven't noticed a huge difference in difficulty in the military. You just have different type of people that are very hard-headed and stubborn like you and I. They're military guys.
Yeah, that are hard-headed and stubborn like us.
Yep.
Yeah. So, as far as like living the faith, and you said living your faith out in the open. Now, it'd probably be a little different. I worked a civilian job before I joined the military at 18, so really don't know a whole lot because I wasn't saved then. But you're a little. Does it seem like you have a little less freedom of speech?
You know, I used to worry about that.
Mm-hmm.
Certain administrations, certain policies and initiatives that are out there in the military. As I get older, I just don't care.
Okay.
You know, I used to try and toe the line a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you do need to comply with the rules that they set. But at the same time, you know, I'm trying to comply and live my life according to God's word and what he says. Mm-hmm. And I feel like I can have that opinion. And I feel like I can voice that because everybody else is voicing their opinion, you know, and for the other issues. So why can't I?
I remember many years back that there was supposedly some Army training that was going on in one of their combat skills training sessions. I don't know if it was Fort Dix or somewhere else, but they had identified a bunch of quote unquote religious extremist groups. Mm-hmm. And one of them was they had like Christians or Christianity or something like that as considered a religious extremist group. Oh. And so it's been interesting. My years in the military, I didn't know how it's been as of late either. But moving past that, one thing I do remember from my service was every year you'd have your annual trainings. You know, you have your information assurance training. You always try to find that guy that gets illegal music downloads, and you let that lady in even though she doesn't have her security card. You do all that stuff, right? So we have annual trainings. One of them is where you have like these moral dilemmas, these ethical dilemmas, and it's one of these where they try to get people to just talk and have dialogue. It's like if your family was starving, would you steal a loaf of bread? If that was illegal, which it is illegal, would you steal a loaf of bread to feed your family? And so you have these ethical dilemmas. With that, you know, supposed ethical, moral dilemmas, has your faith, number one, have you ever been faced with any of these dilemmas in the military or even out of the military? And if you have, how has your faith helped you navigate those dilemmas?
Yeah, I will not miss the military training, mandatory training. That's not something that I'm going to be like, man, I wish I could go back and do more of that.
CBTs.
Yeah. But yeah, something comes to mind. Not too long ago, we were supposed to be out on a counter-narcotics patrol.
And what is counter-narcotics?
That's the drug enforcement where we're looking for drugs.
Okay.
And interdicting vessels.
Okay.
That was where we were out there for, but we ended up coming across a Haitian sailboat full of people. Mm-hmm. Trying to come in the United States. Mm-hmm. And so the Coast Guard is heavily involved in migrant interdiction as well. Mm-hmm. And so we got retasked to handle that. Right. So it was a sailboat, wasn't too terribly big, and I looked at the deck of the boat and I was like, yeah, there's probably 80 people on there is my guess. Mm-hmm. Well, we finally get the boat to stop. We start bringing them on board, and it turns out there was over 400 people on this boat.
Wow.
They were, you know, the top deck was just, they're shoulder to shoulder up there. What we didn't see was everybody down below, and they were literally stacked like firewood in the bottom of this boat.
Wow. Just trying to get from Haiti into the country.
Right. Yeah. And I want to say that they had been out there for a week, maybe 10 days. So everybody's super malnourished, dehydrated, just stench. There's, you know, fecal matter everywhere. There's some significant injuries, like some people have been beaten. Mm-hmm. And so my whole life, I've drawn a pretty hard line on immigration. I've been black and white with it, like, nope, no illegal immigration. You know, I never had any empathy, so to speak. Yeah. But you know, it's easy to say that and act like that thousands of miles away. But when you encounter that, you're literally helping people, try to walk coming off this boat. You're thinking something had to be so terrible that they're putting themselves through this. Yeah. You know, whatever they're leaving is worse than this. Mm-hmm. And you know, I felt some serious compassion for those folks. Yeah. So there's this dilemma. You know, well, my opinion in the matter wasn't going to change what our unit was going to do because I'm a lowly E6 at that time. Right. But it was this internal struggle of like, all right, we're out here to uphold laws, yet how do we care for people that are in desperate need they're sick and hurting, and they're willing to do this. Like, how do we juggle this? So, faith, you look at what the Bible says about in Romans, God's established governments and those laws. It's literally my job to go out there and uphold these laws that our government wants us to enforce. So I fall back on that and I rest, I'm doing the right thing. I'm honoring God by doing what I'm told to do and doing my job. So, that eases it on one hand, but then there's still like, well, how do I care for those people? And, we ended up taking care of them, feeding them, clothing them, giving them some medical care and helping them out. But then you just think, that's just one boat out of many. And, I'm thankful for our church, what we do giving. We watched that video last Sunday of the church being built in Africa, all the churches around and the missionaries that we're supporting. As Americans, we often hear we're very selfish and arrogant and prideful, but we're also very generous. And I'm thankful for that. And so I look at that and Americans gave last year close to $600 billion in charitable giving.
Oh, wow.
And of the demographics of that giving, you've got corporations, different organizations and foundations. The largest demographic is individual charitable giving. It's like 2/3 of that. Wow. So it gives me hope. Yeah. And you just think like, how can we help people? We are, and we can. God's given us much, and we can give financially. You can serve in a variety of ways. So, I think you can hold both at the same time. You can be compassionate. You can care for the people that are in need, but you can also uphold laws at the same time.
Yeah, no, and I imagine that's a dilemma that many times military members will face, as far as, okay, you signed up to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and bear allegiance, true faith to the same, and to obey the orders of the officers appointed over us according to the Uniform Code of Military Justice. And so there are standards that have to be met for good order and discipline. But the moment those become immoral, unethical, then we have an opportunity to disobey an order once it's unlawful, if it's an unlawful order. And so like you were talking about, to obey the government, I find solace in the fact that the government's going to give an account to God as well, as far as how they rule and they govern themselves. But so long as the government's not telling me to go against my Christian faith, and, then, God's going to be pleased in my obedience and my submission in that regard.
Right.
So, no, I appreciate that. So, as in 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse number 3, Paul tells Timothy to endure hardness as a good soldier of Christ. Then he draws this sort of illustration that no man goes to war, and is so focused on the affairs at home that he's so focused in the war so that he can be a good soldier in that capacity, in that regard, looking at the battle in the fight. And Paul's telling Timothy, to endure the fight of a Christian leader in the region of, I think it was Ephesus at the time. So as far as that, as somebody in the military, can you explain, because it's very militarish terminology, could you explain what do you think it means to endure this hardness as a good soldier or Coast Guardsman, for the faith? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so you think like the typical things you would think of when you do tell people that you're a Christian, the mockery, that sort of thing. You typically think about that, the hardships that come along with that. Something that I think that a lot of people don't really understand about the military lifestyle, that haven't been in or don't have family members in. Number one is deployments. And I say deployments. Let me put that in quotation marks for you and all the other guys out there in the real branches. Let's just put it out there. So deployment.
I deployed to Germany.
Right.
In Qatar.
Yeah, you've done some stuff. Yeah. So I laugh because when I tell my friends in the Navy I'm going on to a deployment, they're like, "Oh, that's cute. 3 months, and they're out for like a year. But we go out at that unit. We'd go out for 3 months. Might come home for 4 to 5. And then you do that again. Right. So it's more of a, shorter deployment, but tighter windows and turnaround. So you go out and deploy. All right. You're away from your family. your kids, you come home, things change when you're on deployment.
Yes,
Your
they
wife
do.
takes over. She's doing everything on her own. She's managing schedules and routines and kids. You come home. Well, guess what? The routines are different. Disciplinary actions are different. The kids have changed. So you come home and you try to integrate. And sometimes you just have to take a step back and see, what do you need? That wasn't what I did usually.
It's difficult.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that people don't realize. And then it takes you, so you got the whole father dynamic in the household, then with your wife, how do you reconnect emotionally, romantically? It could take a month or more to kind of get back in a groove with your family. And then guess what? When I'm back home, I'm flying constantly, training, going to ranges constantly, taking new guys out to the range for 2 weeks at a time, gone away from home. So I'm not really home when I'm home, and then I go do it all over again. So it's this cycle. And it's kind of a difficult thing to navigate. The other thing would be transfer seasons that a lot of people might not really understand. So let's just say you go somewhere for 4 years, you get established, you're working, you get comfortable in your job, you're good at your job, you like the area you're in, you've got friends, and all of a sudden you're moving in 4 years. So you're cutting off friendships, saying goodbye to people you care about. And then, you might be going somewhere that you don't necessarily want to go. Like Montgomery wasn't really on my radar.
Yours either.
But, it's all worked out. I'm glad we're here.
The Lord works in mysterious ways.
Yeah, he does. So you've got that factor, and oftentimes you're not in your family, and you get in this thing where like, man, do I even really want to make connections with people? Because I'm just gonna have to say goodbye. So those are some of the hardships that, it can kind of be a lonely time. Not connecting with your wife, your kids, and then just that constant cycle of starting all over.
Yeah, that reintegration thing is definitely no joke. I remember on my first deployment, quote unquote deployment, over to Germany. It was pretty cool because I was deployed. I worked underground, had to go through a few different blast doors. It was a pretty neat setup that I did out there. But while I was deployed, my son, he had turned 1. He had got his first tooth. He said his first words. Started walking all while I was gone. And then when I finally came home, he had no idea who I was.
Oh, wow.
He wanted nothing to do with me for a little while.
That's tough.
And that's difficult, the military members, we all have to, deal with. That reintegration piece, like you were saying, is, the wife's been running the household, different disciplinary, tactics, if you will. And so you don't want to just jump in and take it over right away.
Right.
But, it's something that we have to learn. I didn't do it perfectly. I still don't do it perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a lot of that goes into play with, like, the military divorce rate is almost double what it is for civilians, and I think that's a big part of it.
Yeah, well, that and the fact that I had some airmen that, when I was younger in the military, they would get married because that was the one way they could get out of the dorms. So they would get married.
That's so true.
They'd move out off base. And then they get divorced.
Yeah.
And then, hey.
So the numbers might be skewed a little bit. They might be. They might be.
Welcome to the military. But I want to really, so with this passage in 2 Timothy, he says in verse number 4 that no man that warreth entangleth himself with the affairs of this life, that he may please him who hath chosen him to be a soldier. And so on your deployments, how many deployments have you done? That many, huh?
Yeah, I
okay.
couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
So on all your deployments, how were you able? How did your faith help you try to take your mind off things at home that you couldn't really control because you're deployed, and put your mind on the mission that you're deployed to support?
Yeah.
How has faith really helped that?
Well, number one, especially on deployments, you need to take the accountability and lead in your own walk. You can't rely on going to church and hearing a sermon, because we're out on the ship. We don't have connectivity. I can't call home. I don't have internet access at times. So bringing material, obviously the Bible and other books to study, is you got to stay plugged in, number one. And, there's a few ships that I was on that There was Bible studies going on, which is pretty cool, with just people on the boat, threw them together, and we do them.
Because y'all wouldn't have chapel like
Nope.
a base or a post or anything would have.
No, we're out to sea.
Yeah.
On a relatively smaller boat by Navy standards.
Right.
And number two, you need to have a church that you are attending and your wife's attending for support.
Back home?
Back home. She's got to have that support. I cannot tell you how many times our churches helped us out and when I was gone.
Right.
I mean, I literally can't do anything, but we knew there was so many people a phone call away that would rush over there to help my wife and my kids. So having that support, because like I said, you might be stationed somewhere where you don't have any family. You might be relatively new. So having that church is your family. And then I would say being involved in church too, serving, not just attending, but serving is going to help.
You had made mention of the fact, it's sort of like a dilemma. If we're so used to transferring, PCSing, moving bases, posts, whatever, every so often, do we really want to invest in relationships if we know we're just going to be moving? And it is quite a dilemma. It's something that we fought when we were in South Dakota because we were trying to find a church out there. We were only there for like 2.5, 3 years because I knew I was retiring. I was like checked out. But it seems like out there, no matter how much we tried to make friends, it's like they kept us at arm's length because they knew we were going to be leaving in a couple years, and so they didn't want to develop a deep connection. But, and that was a shame. That hurt. I'm not going to lie, that hurt because then we were sort of like on an island by ourselves in South Dakota. So I definitely understand the trouble that could bring. But all right, so I want to go back a little bit to the operational side, and I want to talk a little bit about more dilemmas that maybe the military, requirements, if you will, the call to duty in the faith. Like, for instance, a dilemma between, how do you love your enemies while you're in a military operation to neutralize them, or take like the sixth commandment, thou shalt not kill. And we know, it doesn't talk about self-defense. It's talking about murdering in a sense like that. So how does your faith help you navigate those areas as far as love of your enemies, fulfilling the duty, and then the sixth commandment?
Yeah, so start with that sixth commandment and like conscientious objectors, that sort of thing. I fully respect their opinion on not wanting to be involved in conflict or violence, and I think that's the beauty of America. We've got a volunteer service.
That is all volunteer service.
So we don't have a draft or conscription. It's, I think fully believe that makes for a healthier military workforce. Yeah. Got people that are volunteering to do it.
That want to do it.
Yeah. So I fully support them in wanting to remove themselves from that. But like you mentioned, thou shalt not kill. Different translations of the Bible say murder. Or, a lot of them, most of them that I've read said murder, and the Hebrew word I think specifically talking about murder. Not just killing. So my question would be, can you show me in the Bible where a soldier doing his job has ever been condemned by God? We see that all over the place with murder.
Right.
And you look at Joshua, the book of Judges, Saul, David, all throughout the Old Testament, God's telling them to go to war.
Right.
And even Nehemiah, they come back to build the wall. He's building the wall with one hand, but they have a sword in one hand, building the wall with the other.
Yeah.
So they're defending. I think you see some examples, certainly in like, I believe it's Hebrews 12, the chapter of faith there, Hall of Faith.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
David, Samson, Gideon are mentioned in there. So you've got those people repeated in the New Testament. And I know some of those arguments are that, well, that's Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament, not the God of the New Testament. But you see that the same people repeated in the New Testament.
Right.
So I think you can draw a very clear distinction between murder and then, killing for military service, defense of a nation, protecting people, deterring aggression. I think you can make a solid biblical argument.
Okay. So what about, because you talk about Pirates of the Caribbean, and you're out here, you're Jack Sparrow, and you're working with the British, and you come across Captain Barbossa, And
Has he got the octopus?
no, that's Davy Jones.
Oh, okay.
I think that's Davy Jones. But you come across Davy Jones,
Okay.
evil villain. And so, but you're supposed to love your enemies, but yet on the other hand, you're commissioned to, really bring them into captivity, if you will. Is there love in that? What about that aspect of it?
Well, would it be loving to let people who are running rampant and violent, stealing, pirating, would it be loving to everybody else to let them continue? Or would it be just to do your job to stop that? And that's where I kind of look at, what is loving?
That's good.
And another thing that goes into that, do we typically jump right into a violent action on somebody? I would say no.
Okay.
We warn people, we warn people, we put economic sanctions on them, we take funding away. Typically, our last resort has been and hopefully will always be military conflict.
Right.
So I feel like, as long as we are approaching it from, in law enforcement, you only meet that level of force with the force needed you only use the level of force in order to gain compliance. You never want to go straight to the highest level of force.
Right.
So as long as we keep that philosophy, treat people with dignity, gain compliance with whatever we need to do, I feel like that's what you have to do.
Yeah, you brought up a good point, because when you're talking about, is it really loving, to allow them to do this with all these other people? And you're right, that's an aspect of it. It's like, you know what? Bringing all these drugs in and killing more people from overdoses. Plus, is it loving to allow somebody to continue going down a path that's harmful for their own lifestyle as well? And so maybe a conviction for that person would be enough to change the course of actions for them. And so
I think about my own story.
Yeah.
Would it be loving for those guys at that unit to let me continue on in my life or to say something to me?
Yeah.
They changed my life.
That's so true. So there was a book out years ago. I don't remember if it was by Colonel North. I don't remember who exactly it was by, but it was titled "No Atheists in Foxholes." And I know the whole premise of the book and really the saying, if you will, is that, somebody can claim to be an atheist, all day long, but the moment, their life is on the line, or the moment that there is a dire need, it seems like atheists find a response to beg a God they don't believe in. No atheists in foxholes type deal. As one that's been in an operational military career field and probably has seen some dangerous situations, do you think that rings true, that there are no atheists in foxholes?
Now, I've never been in combat. I have no experience with that.
Oh,
I'm very thankful for that. I've got family and friends that have really been through some hard times that I could never connect with them on that level. But I do have a couple stories that I've, encounters that I've had in my career that it relates to that same topic. So one morning I was about to go to work and I get a text saying, "Hey, there's been an incident. Somebody's been shot from work." And so didn't really have a lot of details, but we come in. One of my really good friends was a fellow precision marksman. He was engaged to a girl that was also in the Coast Guard, and she was an aircraft maintainer. Well, she heard a noise early in the morning, went out to her car, and there was somebody trying to steal it, and she confronted him, and that individual ended up pulling out a gun and shooting her.
Oh, wow.
And so that was like all the information I had for a long time. We're just trying to figure out if she's okay. But then the commanding officer gathers us all hands. And, this is, again, Coast Guard units are very small in comparison to other military branches. If you know everybody, if you haven't hung out with them yet, you will eventually, kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
Very close-knit.
Yeah.
Very, very tight family in the Coast Guard. So he gets us all down there on the hangar deck, and he drops the news that this young lady did not make it, and she passed away from her gunshot wound. And the whole unit is just devastated.
Yeah.
It's one of our family members. So there's about 20 of us precision marksmen, and we go up to our office. We had our own office, and there's not a dry eye in this place. And there's this one guy, and he was one of the guys that was, more often than anybody else, would make some kind of backhanded comment against Christians or mocking. I'm sure you know the type of person that's just kind of very calloused. And if you were to line them all up and you'd say, which one would you say is probably has no interest in God, you'd probably point at this guy.
Yeah.
Well, we're all up in the office just struggling, and he looked at me with tear-filled eyes and he said, Mike, just please pray. And it was the last person I thought would ask for prayer. And I thought to myself, I was like, man, I didn't even think to pray with these guys. These other Christian guys in here didn't think to pray. It was that guy.
Yeah. Wow.
The guy that you would say is the farthest from God in that moment of trauma and tragedy, he's the one crying out. And it was just kind of like, wow. It was a powerful moment. So I have seen that sort of thing play out in a number of times. And another instance was another tragedy. Another Precision Marksman, his son drowned in the pool, and a 3-year-old kid. But you see through that at the funeral, guys praying together that, just you never saw them do stuff like that before. And through that, you saw guys start going to church and Bible studies that I didn't see that happening. So I think, I don't know why that is, but I think I don't know why that is, but I think when you're faced with death or some kind of tragedy, you really start thinking about where you're going. Like you realize that how fragile it is, and like you can't hold it all together. And I think even the toughest, most callous person in those moments, they will come to their knees in moments like that.
Yeah, definitely. No. Well, we're getting near the end of this interview. What rank are you in the Coast Guard?
I'm an E7.
E7. So what does that mean? Like E7 for me would be a master sergeant.
Okay.
I think in the Army, it's Sergeant First Class. I don't know what the Marines are.
It's Chief Petty Officer.
Chief Petty Officer. Same thing with the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, because the Marines are part of the Navy, right? But what about you? What is an E7 in the Coast Guard?
Chief Petty Officer.
Okay, so are y'all part of the Navy? Y'all not part of y'all separate.
We can, we're Department of Homeland Security. They're DOD. We will fall into the Navy in time of war. We can. So
y'all not DOD.
We're not DOD. I was going to correct you earlier, but I was just going to let it slide. I was just going to let you slide.
Maybe that's why no one,
we're just like TSA on the water.
Is that what it
DHS.
is? Oh well, then I retract my statements. Then look at me. This Air Force guy. I was supposed to be the smart one, right? I scored high enough on the ASVAB to make Air Force a choice.
Whoa.
Military folks always got to joke with each other.
Oh, yeah. Air Force is a very, very good option, closely behind Coast Guard. Everybody listening out there. So.
Yeah. It's like I always like to ask my Marine friends, what color crown is your favorite to eat?
Right, yeah. That's on there. That's what they take for the ASVAB.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but... So E7, I imagine that's a leadership position, right? I know in the Air Force it's considered a senior non-commissioned officer. Same thing for you guys.
Right.
So you've been in leadership positions before?
Sure. Yeah.
So how has your faith, allowed you to make leadership decisions? How has your faith allowed you to lead people underneath you?
Yeah, I've been in several leadership positions, and man, I've made a lot of mistakes as a leader, that's for sure. But
you need to send off paperwork, don't you?
Yeah, that's. I need to get going here pretty soon because they're waiting on that. Yeah. There's a few examples in the Bible that I, heard different sermons on or doing my own reading that I think they offer some really good application on being a leader that I've tried to apply. One of the things I really struggled with when I was a leader was delegating responsibility. Okay. I was one of those guys that, hey, this needs to be done. I'm going to handle it because I want it done on time in my way, or I'm going to be micromanaging it. So it's one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those things I just struggle with. But you look at Moses, that story where he was, judging Israel, and then Jethro says, "Hey, man, get some help."
Yep.
So thinking about that, I had to really work on that. But I mean, Jesus, he had his disciples that he trained and equipped to go on and carry on the mission.
Yep.
So I think that's important for the military or any jobs. You got to train people. You got to let them run with it.
Yeah.
And then it just takes so much off your plate. So those are some biblical examples. And I had some really good mentors in the Coast Guard that would always say, if you're taking care of your people and putting them first, you're not going to fail as a leader. And sometimes you got to come down on them, but like just care for them and You know, you think about David when he was known to be a great king, but he's also known for murder and, you know, the adultery.
Yep.
And so when he's in that position of not being a good king, he's not with his men. He's serving himself. He's being selfish. And so taking an example from that is put your guys first. And I think a mark of a good leader would be, one of the marks of a good leader is empowering the people below you to accomplish things. They're getting recognized for achievements, not you. So being selfless and that servant leader, creating an environment for them to succeed and giving them just a responsibility and sharing the load with them. So yeah, that's just, you know, I always like just pulling things from the Bible and just be like, wow, man, that's right there. I should just be applying that in my life. Why don't I do that?
Yeah, that's good. It makes me remember when I was in the military and we'd always get like a new commander in or something like that. They would always have like their own leadership philosophy. Or like when we'd have our wing kings, our wing commanders come in, they would have like some sort of leadership philosophy motto or whatever.
Yep.
Right. And so I sort of adopted something very similar to what you had said, was mission first, people always.
I like that.
You know, so the mission's got to come first in what we do, but we always need to make sure that we're taking care of the people because the airmen are the ones that do the job.
Sure.
And
yeah.
so, but okay. Well, one of the last final questions I have for you is for anybody that's considering joining the military, and you being a recruiter and you recruit people. I guess that's all recruiters do. You recruit people. You send them off to basic training without
the right paperwork.
Yeah, without the right paperwork, you know, and so you do that. But what advice would you give people, specifically Christians that are wanting to join the military and maybe more so wanting to get involved in like an operational career field? What advice would you give these Christians?
Yeah, I highly encourage people to join the military. It's been a great career for me. I think it's really important we have people that want to serve our country, protecting the freedoms in whatever branch, even if it is the Air Force, unfortunately, and not the Coast Guard.
You know, the Army likes to start the wars, but the Air Force finishes them because no one likes a carpet bomb.
That's true. That's very true. I think that you see that pretty consistent through the last century here.
Yeah.
You know, just some things to keep in mind for those people, though, is like you're going to be stationed places at times where you know, you're going to feel like you're on an island as far as not having any support from believers at work. It's happened in a few places that I've been stationed. You know, so like I was saying before, find that good church. You've got to find that church that you're going to be able to serve in, that's going to help your family out. Number one, take your faith seriously. But we had a pastor a few churches back that he used to really love military families. We had a lot of military people going to church. And he'd say, we get you for 4 years, and then we send you out as missionaries. So that's always stuck with me since that church is like, change your perspective. Everywhere you're going, you're on a mission. And it's going to look different everywhere you go. How you serve the people you meet is going to be different. And then just, you don't have to do anything over the top or extravagant. You know, I think back to those guys that in Wisconsin, they didn't preach me a sermon. They didn't rag on me for the life I was living. What they did is they lived a consistent Christian life in front of me. And to them, it might have seemed insignificant or small or just the quote unquote basic Christian life. But I saw that and I wanted that. And it's just go out there and live it. And, you know, you can have some eternal significance in what you're doing, even though you might think it's small.
Yeah, discipleship. Huge discipleship. Get involved, you know. So, no, I appreciate that. I appreciate that a lot. So we've come to the last question. This is probably the most important question of this entire interview.
Oh.
Okay? So I'm going to make sure, I mean, you're good. You got, like, your ears clean so you be able to hear it clearly, right?
I don't know if they're clean, but...
Well, we're going to see, okay? But this is probably the most important question. And I'm going to read it because I wrote it down. And I want to read it verbatim so I don't mess it up, okay?
All right.
Mike Ruyle, if you could smell like any smell in the world, what smell would you want to smell like and why?
I'm going to make up for some points that I lost in this podcast.
Of course.
I'd like to smell like my wife, Scarlett, because she smells wonderful.
Oh, I wish I had that sad trombone button.
That was weak.
What button
That was
that
weak,
is. Wah, wah, wah. I think you made up some points. So what does she smell like?
It's just for me to know, you know?
Okay, we are
TMI.
We are going to end on that note right there. Mike, I appreciate your time here today and just all the information you gave, some good, clear guidance, leadership principles, how to navigate dilemmas in the military while trying to live an open, active Christian faith. I appreciate that. Thank you for your service to our nation and everything that you've done, the separation from family, having to neutralize vehicles to prevent drug runners from getting into the country. So all that. If there's any military members listening as well, I do want to thank you for your military service to our great nation. And I thank you, everybody else, for listening in, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of Odd Talk. If you're looking for a friendly, loving, Bible-believing, dispensational, grace-oriented church that hasn't succumbed to the woke ideology of our day, be sure to visit Open Door Baptist Church either in person or online. Their address and social media links are listed in the description of the episode. See you on the next episode.